Nearly 4,000 union workers at one of the country's largest meatpacking plants walking off the job this morning.
This is a huge plant, about 4,000 people here. That's the challenge here, this giant meatpacking plant that supplies meat products for stores and supermarkets all around the country.
Over the last year, ground beef is up 17%.
It is so ugly for us when we go to the supermarket or the warehouse club. There's an extreme shortage of cattle.
The supply of cattle in the U.S. has reached a 75-year low.
What would you do if you went to the store this week and the meat section was empty? Or what if there was some left, but the prices were so high you had no choice but to just walk right past it? That's not a hypothetical anymore. It's starting to happen, and most people are not ready for it. So let me ask you, if beef suddenly became scarce or unaffordable for a period of time, would your household be okay? I'm going to break down exactly what's going on with beef shortages in 2026, what's driving prices up, what's clearing store shelves, and most importantly, what you can do right now to protect your family. And make sure you stay until the end, because there's one major mistake that I'm seeing even experienced preppers make right now that could leave them just as vulnerable as everyone else. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. If you're new here, this channel is all about practical preparedness, the kind that actually works in real life. No fear, no hype, just simple step-by-step ways to make sure your family is taken care of. And if you've ever felt overwhelmed by everything you're supposed to prepare for, you're not alone. Most people don't fail at preparedness because they don't care. They fail because it feels too big, too expensive, and too complicated. So today we're going to simplify one very real issue and give you a clear plan forward. Now let's talk about what's actually happening, because this didn't just come out of nowhere. There are a few things colliding right now, and one of the biggest is disruption in meat processing. Right now, as I'm recording this, there's a strike affecting a major meat packing facility in Colorado. By the time this video is released, let's hope that some type of settlement has been reached. But regardless of the outcome, what we're seeing here is that when even one large plant slows down or stops, it creates ripple effects across the entire supply chain. Less processing capacity means fewer finished products making their way to the store shelves, and that just doesn't affect one region, it spreads. Here's something important to understand. We don't have dozens of backup facilities just sitting around waiting to take over. The system is efficient, but that efficiency comes with fragility, which means when something breaks, it doesn't take much to feel it nationwide. At the same time, we've already been dealing with reduced cattle herds, higher feed costs, and long-term strain on ranchers. Some ranchers have been downsizing their herds for years because it simply hasn't been sustainable. So even before this disruption, supply was already tighter than normal. Now, stack that with processing issues and you get exactly what we're seeing: higher prices, tighter supply, and growing uncertainty. And here's the part that most people miss. This doesn't have to be a permanent crisis to create a real problem. Even short-term disruptions can trigger behavior changes. People start buying more just in case. Stores start limiting inventory. Distributors start prioritizing certain buyers. And suddenly, what looked like a temporary issue turns into empty shelves for weeks at a time. We've seen this with other products over the years: toilet paper, disinfectant, hand sanitizer, eggs. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, but what am I actually supposed to do about it? And that's a fair question, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. They recognize the problem, but they don't see a realistic solution, especially with food prices already being so high. And I get that. Preparedness can feel expensive, especially when you're trying to build a buffer from scratch. But I'll show you a couple of the ways that I personally do this without spending a fortune, so you can see what that actually looks like in real life. There's a really simple way to approach this that makes it a lot more manageable, especially if money is tight. I'll walk you through it step by step. First, let's zoom out for a second, because beef is just one piece of a bigger picture. When one major protein source gets tight, people shift. They start buying more chicken, more pork, more eggs, more canned goods, and that increases demand across the board. So even if you're thinking, well, we don't even eat that much beef anyways, this still affects you, because those alternatives won't stay cheap forever. This is how food inflation spreads, quietly at first and then all at once. Be honest with yourself. If your grocery bill went up another 25% next month, would that affect your family? Most people would say yes, and that's exactly why this matters now, not later. So, what do we do? Step one is awareness without panic. You don't need to run out and clear shelves. In fact, that usually backfires. What you do want to do is just get a little bit ahead, because if you're even 1 or 2 steps ahead of the average shopper, you're already in a much better position. Step two is to start building flexibility in your food supply. And this is where a lot of people struggle. They build a pantry, but it's very narrow. It's based on exactly what they eat right now with very little room to adapt. So when something like beef gets expensive, they feel stuck. Or they build a pantry full of food, but not the specific ingredients necessary to create actual meals. I was guilty of that myself when I first began my preparedness journey. Instead, you want options. For example, we keep canned meats, freeze-dried meats, beans, lentils, rice-based meals, pasta-based meals, things that can step in when your first choice isn't available. This isn't about replacing beef forever. It's about giving yourself breathing room, not because you need a ton of it, but because it gives you that cushion if things get tight. Not to mention, what better investment could you make? Food prices are not coming down anytime soon, so anything you stock up on now is only going to increase in value as time goes by. Now, here's something that most people overlook, and this is important. Protein doesn't have to look the way you're used to. We get very locked into meal expectations. Beef equals dinner, chicken equals dinner. But in a disruption, nutrition matters more than tradition. If you can meet your protein needs with a mix of sources, you're going to be just fine. And honestly, this is one of the biggest mindset shifts that separates people who handle disruptions well from those who struggle. Now, I want to plant a quick seed here because this ties directly into affordability. A lot of people assume the only way to prepare is to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars upfront. And that just isn't true. There's a smarter way to do this, and I'll show you exactly how in a minute, because this is where a lot of people either gain momentum or give up completely. But first, let's talk about timing. Timing matters more than quantity. If you wait until shortages are obvious, until prices spike dramatically, until shelves are visibly empty, you're competing with everyone else. That's when things get stressful. That's when mistakes happen. That's when people overspend or end up with things that they don't ever use. Right now, we're still in that early window where you can make calm, intentional decisions. And that's where you want to be. This is exactly why we started slowly building ours before things got obvious, just picking up a little bit here and there, whether that's canned meat, something shelf stable, even just stocking up when prices are comparatively low. What I would love to be able to do is to post a video and tell you exactly what to do, what to buy, and what to avoid. That would make it simple. But the truth is, every family and every household is different with different needs and different budgets. So I try my best to not only offer suggestions, but to share with you exactly what I'm doing to protect my family. For us, reducing dependence on one source is a huge part of what we do and what we think about. In doing so, we're also storing beef and all foods really in several different forms. I feel like this is one of the most important things you can do. So let me explain. Before I even say the words freeze-dried food, I know some people immediately check out because they think it's expensive or not realistic. And I get that. So let me give you a way to think about it that actually makes sense for normal households. With freeze-dried meats, you're looking at 25 to 30 plus years that this is going to keep on your shelf. If you have a freeze dryer and you feel comfortable with testing for moisture and packaging it for long-term storage yourself, that's great. You can preserve meat on your own and kind of cut out the middleman to a certain extent. But if you don't have a freeze dryer, don't worry. Full disclosure here, I do have a freeze dryer sitting right over there on the counter, but I still choose to purchase a majority of our freeze-dried meats from two very trusted commercial sources. For me, I just get a little nervous about the testing for moisture and the packaging for long-term storage. Like many things, I feel like that might be a chore best left to the professionals, because I can't think of anything worse than freeze-drying batches upon batches of meat, only to open them up when I am depending on them and finding nothing but spoiled food. That's like my worst nightmare, can you imagine? And it happens more than you'd think. Home freeze drying also takes up a lot of valuable time, which is something that I never seem to have enough of. I mentioned two sources for freeze-dried meat because once again, I'm never going to feel comfortable relying on just one. The first comes in cans, both number 10 and smaller pantry cans. They keep it pretty basic: ground beef, diced chicken, and sausage crumbles. It's easy to work with, it's easy to rehydrate, and I've got a ton of recipes that utilize these ingredients. A little word of caution though, things are going out of stock quickly with everything going on overseas. Folks are nervous, and rightly so. I just had a meeting with the owner a few days ago, and they are fully anticipating that they're going to be running out of meat. It could be by the end of the month. It could be by the end of the day today. Maybe even by the time this video comes out. They may have already started to run out. It's hard telling. And to make matters worse, because of everything that is going on, it could be several weeks before they're able to restock. And I can only imagine that the prices are going to be increasing as scarcity continues. I'm going to leave a link here on the screen and a QR code, as well as a link in the description. If you get to the page and any of the items say returning soon, that means they are already out of stock. But hopefully you're seeing this video in time so that there's still going to be some inventory left available. My second source that I trust for freeze-dried meats offers theirs in Mylar bags, and boy, do they have quite the variety. They have the same basics: ground beef, sausage, chicken, but that's only the beginning. They have almost anything you could possibly imagine, from ground bison to chicken nuggets, bacon, pulled pork, meatballs, an amazing variety. There are a lot more than what I just listed, and those are just the cooked meats. They also have raw steaks, raw hamburger patties, raw chicken thighs and breasts, raw pork chops. The list goes on and on. Raw meats, freeze-dried raw meats allows you to cook and season your meats exactly how you want. Again, adding another layer of variety and diversity into your pantry. I do have a special discount code that the owner gave me for my audience, and I'm going to share that with you. So I'm going to leave that here. You can use the code WICKEDPREPARED anytime to save 15%, and they always have free shipping. An interesting side note with this company, the owner is heavily involved and heavily invested in the entire process. Everything from overseeing the farms that raise the beef, chicken, and pork, to the processing and all the way through the freeze-drying process. He has complete control over the entire chain of events, which means a little bit less risk of a break in that chain. However, he is also the leading supplier of freeze-dried food to the U.S. Navy, and as you can imagine, they are going through quite a bit right now. So once again, best to stock up while there are some still things available. But that's only freeze-dried meat, and like I told you, we always make sure to diversify. I'm sort of working in order of shelf life here, so the next up is going to be canned meat. There aren't many different sources for commercially canned meat, but Keystone is my favorite by far. But you can also can your own. Again, this is where you have to feel comfortable with doing these types of things in your own kitchen. And of course, home canned jars may not last as long on the shelf safely as commercial canned meats, but you sure can save a lot of money if you have the time and the skills. I found a great deal on corned beef, for example, right before St. Patty's Day. I bought like 22 of them. Several went in the freezer, but I also canned up a lot of it, extending that shelf life out and locking in that savings. Now, if you've been here and watched any of my videos in the past, you may have heard me talk about how I never feel comfortable relying on freezers, and I don't. One extended power outage and your entire supply could be gone in a flash. But the reality is, for short-term storage and convenience, it's really pretty ideal. Well, as long as there is still beef available for sale. That's because there's a certain amount of rotation that needs to be factored in. I'll be the first to admit that I've had corned beef in the freezer for years when they really should be rotated through every year or so. In fact, I just cooked one just the other day that had been in my freezer since 2020. Still tasty, but not exactly recommended. Beef can technically stay safe in a freezer indefinitely, but quality, taste, and texture are certainly going to decline over time, with freezer burn being the main issue. For steaks, it's recommended to rotate every 6 to 12 months. For ground beef, it's more like 3 to 4 months. You can quickly see why the 30-year shelf life of freeze-dried food is so very valuable. Vacuum-sealed beef is a step up with reduced air exposure, extending the quality out to 2 to 3 years. That's how my corned beef was actually packaged and why it was still edible after 6 years in the deep freeze. It's times like these that I'm so thankful for the supply of beef that we get delivered to our door on a monthly basis. All individually vacuum-sealed beef that comes from cattle that's never ever treated with growth hormones, antibiotics, or mRNA vaccines. For those of you who are customers of the Shop a Better Way Shop Club with me, we have access to the best of what they offer, all 100% USDA prime and high choice at discounted membership pricing, and it's all vertically integrated, so they control the quality in every single step of the process, including the genetics and breeding of the cattle, the ranching operations, the farm that grows the feed, even the processing plant itself. In fact, it's the only completely vertically integrated beef operation in the US. Much like the freeze-dried meats I was telling you about, the owner is in control of the entire process, from raising the cattle to processing and packaging. And then it gets delivered frozen right to our door. It makes it super easy to budget it that way, and it keeps us rotating through our supply. And although I can't make any guarantees, I would bet that we are not going to be seeing any supply chain disruptions, and most likely not even any price increases, because these guys aren't relying on outsourcing to meat packing facilities. They do it all themselves. The thing is, here's where most people go wrong, and this is important. They focus only on storing more of what's already getting expensive, more beef, more of the same items. But if supply is tightening, that strategy gets expensive very quickly. A smarter way to approach it is to diversify early. Build around what's still available while you still can, because once demand shifts, those alternatives won't stay cheap either. So instead of chasing the problem, you want to get ahead of it. Now let's come back to that affordability piece, because this is where a lot of people either feel stuck or finally feel like they can move forward. You don't need to build a 6-month supply overnight. You don't need a giant budget. What you need is consistency. A little at a time, done over weeks and months, adds up faster than you'd think. And here's something encouraging. Even a 2-week buffer puts you ahead of a huge percentage of households. A month, you are in a very strong position. You don't have to be perfect to be prepared. Now, remember earlier I said there's one big mistake that even experienced preppers are making right now? Here it is. They're preparing for normal times, just in larger quantities, instead of preparing for change. Instead of asking, what happens if this isn't available? What's my backup plan? And that's the difference. Preparedness isn't just storage, it's adaptability. So let's bring this all together and make it really practical. If beef prices continue to rise or availability tightens further, you want 3 things in place: a small buffer of what you normally eat so you're not immediately affected, a flexible pantry that allows you to pivot without stress, and a buying strategy that keeps you ahead of the curve without overspending. Now let's talk mindset, because this is where everything either clicks or falls apart. Preparedness is not about fear. It's about reducing friction in your life. It's about making sure that when something shifts, you don't have to react emotionally. You already have a plan. You already have options. And that confidence is worth more than a perfectly stocked pantry, because even a small amount of preparation done consistently puts you ahead of most people. And if you're watching this right now, thinking about this and taking it seriously, you're already ahead. You really are. So here's your next step. Don't overthink it. Don't try to solve everything today. Just take one small action. Start building flexibility. Pay attention to what's happening without getting pulled into panic. And you're going to be in a much better position than most households. If you want help building this step by step, I put a few things down below that might make it easier, along with the sources that I use and trust. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a beef emoji in the comments to let me know you stayed with me till the end. And if you want to take steps towards being more prepared, check out this video next. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.